More detailed graphics, more levels of play.
Awesome!
Light guns. They were once the wondrous accessory which seemed to elevate our home computers and consoles to new heights. We'd played Operation Wolf in the arcades, but to experience this in the home was mind-blowing. Of course, the in-home experience never quite lived up to the arcade sensations, but these accessories provided enough respite from the standard fare of gameplay to rejuvenate the whole experience and add an additional level of fun to proceedings. Of course, these days LCD televisions prevent most of these accessories from working. They require the direct connection to a CRT television, so those white flashes of light can be timed perfectly for reception by the light gun sensor. Modern flat screens inhibit this direct precision, but it's worth grabbing a CRT just to relive these charming light phaser days. In this short historical episode, I'm going to be focusing on one light gun in particular, or at least a spin-off of it, the Sega Light Phaser, designed for the Sega Master System. A sturdy slab of plastic which looks pretty menacing in its all black aesthetic. The later American versions had an orange cap added onto the end to prevent confusion with real guns, which are seemingly abundant throughout the country. You don't want to be firing a Glock 17 at your CRT television. Likewise, you don't want to attempt to hold up a bank with your Sega Light Phaser, although apparently someone did something very similar a few years ago. But for most of us, this orange beacon thankfully removed any doubt from the situation. Interestingly, the Sega Light Phaser looks very similar to the 1987 Amstrad and Mastertronic Sinclair Magnum Phaser, which would gain popularity with the Spectrum Plus 2 game bundles in 1989, and clearly it takes inspiration from Sega's model, which came out in 1986. You might think they've been run from the same mould, but they're very slightly different in size and aesthetic, with the Sinclair model feeling distinctly cheaper to hold and use, but otherwise performing the exact same job. A gun which shares an even more striking appearance with the Sega Light Phaser is the ZILLION laser tag toy. In fact, the mould is identical. But why, and where did this lead? Let's begin with ZILLION. ZILLION was a Japanese anime television series which ran from the 12th of April 1987 to the 13th of December 1987, consisting of 31 episodes and produced by the people who would become the acclaimed production IG, with some episodes even scripted by Ghost in the Shell director Mamoru Oshii. 6 of these episodes were dubbed into English and released in North America on VHS. The basic story takes place on the planet Maris in 2387. A race known as the Noozers have started a genocide program to kill all humans in order to lay eggs and reproduce on the planet. However, thanks to the appearance of some mysterious guns, collectively called the ZILLION weapon system, their plans are somewhat thwarted. 3 soldiers known as the White Knights, or disturbingly, the White Nuts, as they would later be known, are chosen to operate these weapons, and so the fight plays out in a typically bizarre storyline. Now this is an anime which had Sega tied in from the beginning. In fact, the anime was sponsored by Sega Enterprises to go hand in hand with the home video game due for release on the 27th of May 1987, 1 month after the series first aired. This sponsorship is evident from the fact that the gun used in ZILLION is based entirely on the Master System Light Phaser, even down to the trailing wire which connects the weapon to your console. It also features Opa Opa, really the Master System's original mascot, which starred in the awesome game Fantasy Zone in 1986. As well as providing kids entertainment, the anime had a dual purpose. The first was to help push sales of the Master System and their exclusive ZILLION game, in an attempt to try and gain ground from Nintendo. The second was to sell a line of merchandise released by Sega at the same time, including an Opa Opa toy. One obvious question which may pop up with this knowledge is, why doesn't the ZILLION game actually make use of the Master System Light Phaser, giving it seemingly obvious tie-in? The answer to that is, given the Light Phaser wasn't actually released in Japan, it wouldn't have made for very good sales. But maybe Sega were hoping for a bigger impact when taking the anime overseas to light gun owning regions, where the connection could be made. Or, if the series was successful, maybe Sega had hoped to launch the Master System light gun in Japan as well. It's hard to say really, but unfortunately the anime failed to get even enough interest to herald a second series in its homeland, and therefore didn't really help with Sega's console sales. Over in North America, the Sega Light Phaser had been released in 1986, followed by Europe in 1987, and bundled with marksman shooting, trap shooting and safari hunt. Although not available in Japan, its anime tie-in would not be wasted, as the molds were reused for the ZILLION laser tag toy, released in Japan, Europe and Brazil. The gun design fitted the show, and of course using a pre-molded Sega associated design saved money. Along with the series, the main merchandise didn't sell terribly well, but the laser tag gun clearly proved the most popular spin-off, especially in Japan, and was seemingly sold for several years after the series finished. Japan had both the basic gun releases and JJ's upgraded gun. Now, keen viewers might also spot that the gun changes in the latter episodes. This is because Sega fell out with ZILLION's creators, Tatsunoko Production, midway through the series, due to financial and ideological issues, this being a further and possibly more pertinent reason why the series was wrapped up early. The ZILLION laser gun was released in Japan by Sega and in Europe by Matchbox. This is the version I have, although we didn't have the anime, so it's not adorned with the tied-in box art. Instead featuring 80s Tron-like packaging which radiates nostalgic feelings of electronica. Inside the packaging of the UK release we have the gun, a power pack, a target and an instruction sheet. Although mine seems to have gone amiss. Inserting 2 C-cell batteries powers your power pack. The gun then plugs into the power pack and it's ready for use. If you're playing solo, then your objective is really to hit the triangle target, which you can place anywhere. This has 3 accuracy settings and will beep and flash upon successful impact. You can also get a counter accessory to plug in and record your hits. The range is actually quite impressive. You can achieve 20 meters in daylight and about 30 meters in the dark, projecting a fierce flash of white light on whatever it hits. The box gives you some ideas for how to feel less of a loner using reflective surfaces to mix up your target practice, something I found particularly useful. But the real fun was evidently with more than one person. If you had 2 guns and were playing with friends, then you can wear the triangle clip somewhere, on your belt maybe, and fire at each other, just like a light gun game should be played. You can of course also play with friends using one set, in a cat and mouse type scenario, where one person runs around with a target and the other shoots frantically with the gun. Something fun to play perhaps in a shopping mall, or down the pub when you're bored. Over in Brazil, the ZILLION light gun was released in 1988 and distributed through Tectoy. This in fact marks the beginning of the relationship established between Tectoy and Sega, which would ultimately end up with Tectoy manufacturing and distributing Sega's consoles up until, well, today really, with a limited edition SD card ready Mega Drive released earlier this year. This relationship created a market which accounted for a substantial portion of Sega's console share, selling millions of both Master System and Mega Drive consoles, which even led to exclusive game titles for both consoles running into the late 90s, and a string of all-in-one game machines. Stefano Arnhold, Tectoy's then CEO, has stated in an interview that sales of the ZILLION pistol in Brazil were crucial to Sega closing the Tectoy partnership. The Brazilian tag gun itself was based on the upgraded Japanese design, looking somewhat more fanciful than the Master System light phaser mold. Although with the Sega Master System around the corner, a Tectoy version of its phaser would naturally follow in this region. ZILLION didn't garner the success Sega had hoped, but the game was popular enough to warrant a sequel, with ZILLION 2 launching in December 1987 in Japan and arriving later in 1988 on Western shores. Although this game does feel somewhat more rushed than the first, and perhaps Sega just got it out there because it was already in development. Ultimately, however, ZILLION indirectly managed to forge a much bigger market than Sega had envisaged, just in a different part of the world. The ZILLION light gun toy was phased out at the end of the 1980s, with the Sega lock-on guns picking up the laser tag baton from 1992 onwards, mimicking the experience of laser game venues like Quasar and Megazone, which were particularly popular throughout the 80s and 90s. I was always incredibly pleased when a party invite was a Quasar party. Games were still being launched for the Sega Light Phaser into the 90s, helped in part as it was bundled with many Master System packs throughout the 80s, proving its niche popularity with those who sometimes enjoy pointing a gun at the screen rather than dabbling with a control pad. As for the white nuts, well, I recommend you don't enter it as a search term on Google these days. Thanks for watching this short historical story about light phasers and ZILLION and whatnot. There's other documentaries you can click on here, you can subscribe, you can contribute to my Patreon if you want to support my channel, or leave, it's entirely up to you. In any case, thank you very much and I hope you have a great evening.